Be the cricket slayer. Slay the cricket within. It's the only way it's going to happen, folks. We got to be the cricket slayer. We got to stop that thing that's going to cause us to do the wrong thing or think we're doing the right thing and it's not the right thing, and it's got to be figured out. If we don't do the right thing, then nothing that we do is going to actually work against those that are doing the right thing. Be the cricket slayer. And what I've been telling you about knowledge is not power. It's what you do with your knowledge properly that works. Gentlemen, this stuff, nothing new under the sun, folks. Gentlemen, way back when, in the real olden days, in the day, about the time the United States of America is coming into its own, coming on its own, this has always been. Knowing is not enough. A gentleman named Johann, or I guess Johann, Wolfgang von Goethe said, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do. That's all I've been saying, folks. Just found this guy out. Just happened to come across a little quote he said way back in the 1800s, beginning of the 1800s. This is before the Civil War. It's always been a perpetual problem. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. I say you have to apply correctly. In other words, applying is the doing, and it has to be done right. And I'll say it one more time. Those that are doing correctly are going to beat everyone that thinks they're doing correctly. So what you think may not be what is real. What you think you know, it may not be what you know. So let's be the cricket slayer. Let's slay the cricket within. Let's stop allowing these other people to come on us. Let's go ahead. If you don't listen to me, listen to Goethe. He'll tell us all about it in his way. It's the same story over and over. For those of you on past cast, the content code is BTWRLM171. BTWRLM171. You put that in a search engine, BehindTheWoodshed also, and you should be able to get the content page for the broadcaster as long as it's ever posted. Take a couple hours to put that together so you can see what I was reading, and then if you read inside what I post, you actually go to the links from where I post. If in the future, you can see more of an in-depth view of what I was looking at, and kind of how I approach looking at things to find out more of the total story. Kind of look through what we're told, trying to anticipate, folks. I think when I was doing a video, that's what I would tell people who wanted, they wanted to know why was I doing so well? Why was I such a good videographer, a photographer? And I said the main thing, it seems to me, after all these years, has been anticipating. You anticipate the next moment. To do that, you have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to be able to anticipate actions of people and respond to them, watch their response. Not that you're responding to them, you're responding to their response. And knowing where you have to be in order to get your shot. And so you have to be, in other words, you're predicting the future at some level in the moment to get the shot you want, or the one you need. In other words, when we're doing video production, live to tape, you want to tell a story. You have to be able to tell that story. In other words, you have to know that story before it's going to happen. However odd this sounds, is exactly how this works, though. You predict the future by being your awareness. There's a certain sequence of things. You may only be just moments and seconds right before it happens, but you put yourself in the position that the odds of what you've seen happen before are going to happen again, and you put yourself in that place, or you watch the adjustments. And you have the anticipation of what's to be done. You know that even if you're not exactly right, you're so close that it doesn't take much to adjust. And so you got a second shot at it, even if you make a little bit of a mistake. But to not to be aware, not to put yourself, not to anticipate, you're always at least one step behind. If not part of the scene that you're going to take a picture of. You become part of the accident. And I've been advocating here, let's get ahead of the game. Let's get ahead of how this works. Let's stop being silent. Let's stop doing the wrong thing. Let's start doing the right thing. And a lot of that is in anticipation. And when you go to anticipation, you have to already be engaged. You have to engage in ways and use intuitions and use your knowledge and use your experience. It all has to come in and comes instantaneously. That's what made me a little bit different than a lot of other people in photography or videography. People would be wondering, why am I over here? I would be saying, well, because this next thing's coming here. And they wouldn't understand how I could figure that out. And I wasn't really psychic to that extent. I wasn't like being told by angels. It's just something after a while you work in a certain field because you've been in the field doing it. Your experience and the wisdom comes. Your intuition kicks in. There is that sixth sense, and you never not listen to that. That's sitting there, but it helps only to aid those that are using the other bits as well. So that failure for us to act right is that cricket in us, and I'm asking us to be the cricket slayer. And each one of us is the only one that can do that. I can ask you to, but I can't stop you from being the cricket. So at some level, it's pretty frustrating, but at the other level, that's the wonder of it all. Here we are, that close. We're that close, really. So here's an intuitional thing in the news. We are here behind the woodshed. We're beyond media. We don't even know. I use the news only to show you that there's a subject matter to think about. Our lives are so intertwined now. It's into the global area and then the global. As I show you the what I consider to be the mirror in other places is affecting you where you live. And we speak from the reference of United States of America, but I suspect it's really the mirror is everywhere for everybody if you just go out and look, because all these these people that rise, the caucustocracy that rises, that becomes your government, however what name you call it, the excrement that rises to the top, that you allow to rule you and continue to allow, part of the cricketdom, is what is global. It seems these people are everywhere. And then they made a global organization to make it more official. And it's just another association. It's not even a government. But everyone agrees that it is, and so it's so. And look how simple that was. They got you to buy in, and that's what it is. The reality becomes what you allow it to be. I've told you that even before what I was talking. Early on, the mining law and grants and the congressional grants and then the obligations and duties, people thought I was nuts. They still think I'm kind of nuts. But the facts in the law is there, so I'm kind of beyond that. But I realized early on, I said, even if I am nuts, if I get enough people to believe what I'm saying, then it's normal. And that's why you can't hear the new normal. It's another offshoot. And so we can take lessons from how we're being done in, and we can apply them ourselves, or we can be oblivious to them and us be done in without knowledge of it. And be able to be the crickets or the whiners. We get the whining crickets. All because we didn't kill that cricket within. We didn't become our own cricket slayer. So Goethe has it right. I must have channeled Goethe when I came up with the idea knowledge is not power. Knowledge applied properly is power, or can be actually power. See, there's no guarantees, but that's what I've been saying, and I don't know that Goethe is too far different than what I've said. So there's a certain thing. You get to a certain point. Once you see certain things, there's the truth. The truth, the truism is consistent. And so together with all these truisms, and you bring your knowledge, your wisdom, by the experience of the knowledge applied, you now build yourself a more complete being, acting in the world that you find yourself in. You have this unknown that we might consider intuition, and then we have actual people who've done all this before. We think is intuition. They've seen the thing coming. That something very serious has been happening. I've been telling you, be careful what's going on with the United States being the bully and brute, the police officer of the world, if you can see it. The military executioner, actually. The politics applied, the commerce applied, forcing you into servitude, human resources everywhere. When nations are making decisions, or leaders are making decisions, pay attention. Putin sacks every commander in the Baltic fleet in Stalin-style purge after top brass refusal to follow his orders to confront Western ships. Now they make this as a prejudicial statement, Stalin-style purge. This is the president of Russia. This also says that they're a lot closer to the civil authority that the United States follows, where the military authority is subject to the civil. This is their commander-in-chief sacking the top brass that will not follow an order given to them. I don't think a president does that lightly. And if we were thinking that this isn't happening, this is not serious between what the Russian people and nation are feeling versus NATO's nastiness. No different than we see the United States influence and nastiness in the Philippines case, where China was divested of some territorial seas, and what the threat to they are. And I'm not making a judgment either way. It does look like there was some shenanigans going on, and the courts were just as corrupt there. Rule of law and democracy was sitting in that case to corrupt that. To tell you the truth, I don't know whose rights are right. However, China's feeling slighted, so they're saying, we're not going to recognize your authority. And guess what? They're becoming big and bad enough to say so. And so we're back to this dog-eat-dog world, that lawless world, where everyone has to fend for themselves. But Putin sacks every commander in the Baltic fleet. It is not something to dismiss. His intuition is telling him, and his physical, and his knowledge and his experience is telling him, I've got to get rid of some people. Either the nation's struggling or will struggle, or be put in a risk, or whatever, or maybe he will be confronted. I don't know what the military side of this does, but we hear a little bit of this coming out really quickly as well, with presidents of nations doing some interesting things. So I would take note. Putin is making sure that his officers know that there's a war afoot, a war footing being developed, and he's not going to allow his military commanders, his brass, to refuse. They're not going to be. They're coming to the time when they're starting to gear up to become the military machines that it looks like the West is pushing them to have to be. Another thing I was suggesting to you, be careful on what the real story is behind the scenes. Remember, I mentioned with the Brexit. We go back to that for now and move over into the European, and Russia's got ties with Europe, even behind the scenes, to do their commerce and all that, and do relations with the government. And then there's not, the United States is sitting across the pond, pretty detached. But remember, I told you, as this Brexit comes on, and we don't know the game behind the game, the level behind the level, the dimension behind the dimension. I told you that I wouldn't be surprised to watch the City of London Financial Construct Center be moved. And to watch for that, because that's really where the future of the world's going, and the control, the global governancy is going to have a financial construct over everyone's life on multiple levels as well. I went through it with the SDR and the domestic money, whether or not it's backed by gold. It's all going to be a setup, folks. They're going to get you to buy in because you're going to. This is what the big push right now, to get everyone focused on gold. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but I'm talking to you here. Your specie was already minted, but they got rid of the paper back, and so you have to be careful on what the new stuff comes in when they bring it in, how it's conditioned. What are the attachments to use it? How do they get you to plug into a system they've already got planned for you? Silent weapons for quiet wars rings loud here. But here's the story right here last week, a few days ago. A race to displace City of London turns into feeding frenzy. Race to displace City of London turns into a feeding frenzy. It is on the table that the so-called City of London, the city within a city, the jurisdiction within a jurisdiction, is looking for a new home. And I told you that I wouldn't be surprised to find it becomes Jerusalem. I don't know, folks. I'm just looking at the tail of the tape. But here it is. Right after Brexit, now we're talking about the City of London not having a home. They're looking for a new place. We heard that Brussels may not be that place. It probably won't be Germany or France either. As global banks begin scouting for new European banks in the wake of the last month's Brexit vote, it appears the City of London's glory days as the world's most important financial center may be numbered. City-based banks and hedge funds are worried about losing their passport rights, which grant them full access to the EU financial markets. They're also concerned the UK might lose its special authorization to clear transactions in euros. Folks, that's never going to happen. This is just all fodder language. This is the fact that they're going to be looking to move the City of London control center. Don't be surprised if it moves to Jerusalem. Don't be surprised if it moves just anywhere. I'm surprised. I said if they haven't put that on an island, if they put it on an island, you'd have known it was a big tax haven. Because that's exactly what the City of London, the jurisdiction within a jurisdiction, does for financial matters. And so, here was in the news. Just want to let you know, anticipate, folks. You can see what's going to happen in the future. If what I'm saying is correct, for the little bitty view I have from behind the woodshed, and from little bit of time that I put into looking at a lot of this stuff, if my anticipation is correct, then you're going to have to really consider how you're going to protect yourself in the future in a monetary sense. That's why I keep saying you're going to have to figure out a separate, they'll call it parallel system. It's the original system. It's the one of actual weight and measure, and you're going to have coin in your pocket that's the specie that you're going to work with. Not the stuff they're going to hand you that's going to be a spot of gold atoms on a card that's monetized and certified and now regulable. The spot of gold, the atoms of gold they place on a card will be some value that you get to use, and you'll think you're doing something good. Well, they got you doing the monkey work. They're controlling your lives at the international level. And you become a governanty state anyway. So, here it was in the news. Just in a way, I don't know what to say. Here it is. They haven't been talking about it, but now there's a feeding frenzy of all these people thinking they're going to lose their abilities, but they're not. This is to get you to think that they got something to lose, and this is going to be the financial center change. This is how the world changes, how it works. And they get us focused on the wrong stuff, and then we do the wrong thing. We take the wrong action. A lot of times we take it and we walk right into the hands of the occupier. I'll just put it that way, the controller. And so there's this multi-dimensional gamesmanship that goes on, and I think we just witnessed I don't know how it's going to turn out, but we just witnessed, I think, here in the last few days, I think the gamesmanship of the world, we just got a new insight on how deep this works. Presidents taking control to protect themselves. How to anticipate what the enemy's going to do to take you down. How to avoid these springs. How to stop like what they're doing to the United States to get us all focused on the divisions among us, instead of saying, wait a minute, those divisions are made to keep us separated and to keep us fighting amongst ourselves. We're so out of awareness of what we're actually supposed to do, and I'm talking in the general, and then I'm also maybe not talking so much general, maybe every one of us, because we still can say, yeah, I know that, and we'll do nothing more than just say, yeah, I recognize how aware I am. Again, it's not about what you know. It's about not what you think you know. It's about what you do with what you know. And when you start doing with what you think you thought you know, you'll find out how much you did know. And that's where that experience and then the wisdom from that comes. And you just get better and better at it, whatever you put your mind to and your experience and your practice, right? Everything you do, it's like any kind of muscle that you practice. And I guess that was the other underlying thing. As I was a videographer and a photographer when you anticipate, that's a muscle that becomes stronger and stronger. It almost begins to look to people from the outside that it's an extra natural phenomenon, but I don't know that it is. And it was amazing. I always had a smile on my face. People would take direction. Those that wanted to really do photography, become the next, the production videographer, they would start to apply what I was saying. I would have to smile to watch them come into their own. I could tell watching their camera as the producer of the director of the broadcast. I could tell that they were getting it just by watching where they pointed their camera and when. And I'm sitting in a truck, and I could tell that far away they were getting it. And so there's something that's just, it's an unspoken language of action. I can only just talk to you about it. I wish I could put in y'all, even the ones that tried and got beat down, or what, all that seemed to work, and all the long time it takes, and If I could just give you a glimpse of that. I mean, I look at what I do and I don't know how we're going to be successful. Just like it's overwhelming to even think that we might actually be successful, but I can tell you we're that close if we just took the right mindset and took the right action. And a lot of this goes away really, really quickly. And it's not on our opinion. That's the other thing that gets me. It's all written down for us. Not the plan of the occupier. That tells us how we defeat them. It's the plan for us that was supposed to get us to the next place as people, trying to live amongst each other. So, the City of London, looking for a new home. Who would have thunk it, folks? There it is. I told you, I talked to you about this at the Brexit. I said a lot of people are not talking about this, but this has been the underlying plan. I can't tell you where it's all going to go. I just kind of tell you that it might go. It looks like it will. And here we are with giving you the media is going to tell you the points to not look at, but I'm telling you look through that. Make those points that are a waste of your time or a waste of your sympathy or empathy, make those transparent to you. But go for the core. So something came up here with the global geopolitics and the people working in their nations. Something came up here. It has to do with Turkey. Very interesting. There was a purported coup that happened in Turkey to purportedly overthrow Erdogan. And I saw it a couple days ago, and I was only partly interested. I got a lot of other things I've got to pay attention to. What do I care about a coup in Turkey? But and that would be a huge thing to hear and see. We're watching geopolitical dynamics. The whodunit starts to come up. But what kind of got me was I started to become more bothered by people that are in the so-called alternative media, and what are claims, what claims are made about what they know and what they do, and so I've also learned how to and you really kind of look at this too, how to take anomalies, take note of the anomalies. Like I kind of tell you, when you see the government telling you that something is, or you find something in the so-called news that says this is a historic thing, it's never happened before, take note of that. These anomalies, the thing that ought to have happened that didn't, you should take some time to look at. Well, this kind of went through on this Turkey coup thing, and I wanted to go through a little bit of this. It happens to be all through Twitter. I've got a whole lot of links that you'll get in the blogcaster just to go through to see for yourself how you can build up things from anomalies. What the anomaly started from was that Sibel Edmonds had been on I follow her on the Twitter, she came on a thing and said that the Turkey coup, and I didn't know anything about the Turkey coup, but she said that I went on record with Corbett 6 months ago predicting the final stage of Erdogan's takedown. And I said, oh, interesting. So she was insightful enough, and she's from there. She's got her own knowledge and her own experience and her own travails, the government attacking her, being a whistleblower. She's got an expertise that I do not want to diminish here. But notwithstanding that expertise, that experience, that she paid a price, folks. I mean, this is the thing. We've got to be very delicate here. She makes a claim that 6 months ago, she predicted the final stage of Erdogan's takedown. James Corbett came back out and said the same thing, that he had discussed with her this Turkey coup 6 months ago, that a coup would happen. And that still didn't get my interest, although I was saying, okay, wow, she predicted something here, and it's right on her expertise. And now they're starting to promote it, and then NewsBud picks it up. It's a new news, supposedly independent news organization, supposed to do what MSN doesn't do. And again, I don't want to condemn this entire thing. I'm trying to show you, even in good intentions, you have to be careful on what you accept as valid information. I'm taking this as an anomaly. That led me to some other conclusion, actually, based on the certainty that everybody was making along these things. That then NewsBud comes up. It's a news organization that's starting out. It was Kickstarter funded by a bunch of people. The people were going to pay for media, and apparently there was something that was done by Lou Rockwell with Sibel Edmonds, and Turkey coup predicted by Sibel Edmonds on Lou Rockwell's show in August of 2015. Now, that still didn't even catch. I'm still just looking. Well, great. They were on it. We got some people that really do research, and then I got this little Twitter come through, that Sibel Edmonds actually retweets, and it says, "Oh, U.S. caught completely off guard by Turkish coup." That caught my attention, folks. That's an anomaly, because the theory was that NATO was going to be doing this, and NATO would necessarily be the United States. And so then I looked. That's what caught my attention. So I don't know if that's surprising to you, but it surprised me. Someone would come up and say, "Wait a minute, the U.S. is caught off guard." So then I went back and I listened to the interview, and the interview was saying exactly what the first Twitter said. That she said that this was the final stage of Erdogan's takedown. Yet this new Twitter says, "Oh, the United States is surprised, and the takedown was going to be done because of a NATO operation." Well, if the U.S. is surprised, that means maybe it's not a NATO operation. Now I'm interested. Now we're looking at a couple problems here. One is a misinterpretation and a misclaim of an anticipation, a misclaim of a prediction, and we're going to be given the wrong information. Then I received this retweet, all coming through Sibel Edmonds, saying, "Turkey coup summary. 1. This is a clique within the military, not the whole military. 2. It is failing. 3. It will further empower Erdogan." And that locked it in for me. This now became the news, important stuff, folks. This is beyond just a cursory look and that's what's going down in Turkey. If this was done to empower Erdogan, this changes the whole thing. Erdogan can't lose, which means the prediction that he would fall based on NATO imposition was wrong, even though they touted it over and over and over that the prediction had been made, that Erdogan would fall. This guy who lives in this Mustafa Akyol, who has an insight to his own government's workings, I suppose. He lives there. He's got to survive with it. He knew ahead of time that something like this would empower Erdogan. That could not be the fall of Erdogan, and it could not then be, if NATO was to be planning that, or whomever, it could not be going by any of those plans. And this Mustafa writes again, Erdogan speaks on Twitter. This is a coup attempt by a faction in the military, the Parallels, Gulenists. He calls people to come out. And I was thinking, why? How would he even know this is a coup by a faction? This is only hours after this supposed coup happens. And he calls people out into the street because one of the themes that comes out of this is democracy is going to win. And we already know in the West, rule of law, well, for those of us behind the woodshed, rule of law and democracy is your destruction. So going from a prediction that Erdogan, of people who were supposed to know about this dynamic in there, that Erdogan was going to fall at the hands of a NATO coup, to saying that now Erdogan's going to be upheld, and they already know it's a clique in the military, starts to get my wheels turning as to, okay, who done it? It's not NATO. Somebody else pops up right away here. It's in a few hours as it was going on, as it went through the stream on Twitter, periodically looking in, and I was going through and looking for anomalies. Now I'm focusing on things, the main feed, the main promotion of the prediction, even the main discussion of what was going on was not interesting. It was these anomalies within the context that Erdogan was going to be taken down, the prediction of people who know about this stuff, who I have to explain too, within the context of the interview, it was stated that what happens as far as coups in Turkey happens pretty regular. In other words, I could be someone that says, oh, Erdogan's going to fall by a coup. Someone's going to fall by a coup, and I probably would be more right than wrong, because coups happen all the time and they're always successful. And so the anomaly here was the president already knows it's a small faction. He's on an airplane someplace. coming in, supposedly. But this little Twitter comes up, says, usual coups in Turkey are planned for years and carefully executed. This one appears haphazard and hastily organized. Another insight from someone that lives there, guiding my interpretation of what I'm seeing and what to expect from these things. What's normal in Turkey in these coup type things? We're oblivious to them in the United States. I wouldn't have a clue. The type of coups we see are the ones that come silently, like what rules your life right now within your own governments, because you didn't understand to keep the republic, essentially. So that's how they take us down. They give us the breads and circuses of how democratic your life is beautiful, and then they subvert that system that they claim was democratic. It's not, but that's what they claim it was, and you buy into that. So this was an unusual coup. So I'm here, I've got an anomaly. Boom, pull that out. And so I'm just going down, and I've high-graded a little bit of these tabs, going right down this thought of who done it, folks. If NATO was surprised, and then ultimately Russia's response is, well, they must have some this shows the discontent between the military and the government, and it's not actually, because the military, this is just a faction of that. The president knows that already. Then the Russians are out of it as well. They're not even wanting to respond into this. So let's funnel. This is becoming very interesting now. This is an unusual coup. The president already knows. He's on an airplane out in the middle of the Mediterranean or someplace, and he already knows it's a small faction of the military. He calls out the nation. I'm calling out our nation. Let us gather at squares and airports. Let us give them the answer they deserve. Remember, this guy's on an airplane. Okay, he's out and over. And the first report was that he was put in a safe spot. Well, but he wasn't. He was on an airplane. And he's flying in. So they also claim that he diverted his aircraft to go fly into the airport right where the coup was occurring. So these are other anomalies. You wouldn't do that if there was an actual coup going down. And this was a prediction that the coup would happen 6 months ago, and it would be accomplished by NATO. Because, of course, Erdogan is, a nut, and he's doing all these wild things, and so he has to go. That's what we're fed in the West. So Erdogan calls the people into the street, because this theme eventually comes that democracy is going to win. He's now taking away the force and power of the military. The people are going to stand up, and he calls people out to do so. Then another report comes out, and these are kind of chronological, kind of not, because I got them on a feed, and I got them as they struck me the importance of their information. So some of these are not actually in chronological order, but they came as they struck me of importance. Within the frame of the discussion that was being exposed. Likely President Erdogan's plane heading to Istanbul, crowds gathering to greet him. Look at the flight pattern. Well, that was at the time that he was proclaiming that he knew it was a clique, and it was before they knew it was still a so-called coup in action. Why would his plane be going at it? I mean, he's trying to show you he's also this white knight, I suppose, to come and protect his nation. So this is these other anomalies that to start to say, well, it's not NATO and it's not Russia and it's maybe not Israel. That becomes an interesting question, because a couple of the top people that are targeted immediately did have Israeli ties as advisors. And so we have another nuance that could be coming here. Marmaris Resort, where Erdogan was vacationing, also bombed. Erdogan tells reporters, was a story. He was vacationing somewhere and coming, and they bombed that place. And this is at the time the coup is ongoing here. They're supposedly taking over bridges and going to the parliament and running down people and all kinds of stuff going on. And he's saying that his vacation spot was bombed, trying to anticipate that they had evidence. But he's saying it. I suppose that they could have known that. How'd they know that the bombing was done by the coup? I mean, how did they know any of that? But that's what he's saying. Pro-government media released at least a list of putschists, some 40 officers, colonels, or even lower ranks. They are also accused to be Gulenists. This is all happening, folks. The government's putting out these lists of people that are tied to the guy that Erdogan eventually blames for the attempt. So while this is going on, they already know who the officers are, even though the military is supposed to be the one that's doing this. And then the biggest anomaly, and until I saw the action, it didn't come clear maybe what was going on, but when it did, I did see it. It seemed to solidify for me what had gone on here. When it shows another Twitter that goes through with a picture, footage of soldiers surrendering on Istanbul Bosphorus Bridge. Turkey coup is over. When you see in the picture, you see a tank, and you see a bunch of soldiers behind the tank on the bridge side. They're not on the mainland side, they're on the bridge side. And until you see the video, then you see them walking out, you realize none of them have a gun. You also notice right away the tank is sitting broadside to the bridge, and the turret is not going down the bridge or up the bridge. There's no attack coming from the creek or from the river that it crosses. So what's this tank doing? The larger picture behind, you'll find a whole bunch of military equipment parked in a haphazard way. But all these military guys coming out, eventually putting their hands up, none of them have a weapon. And when I saw that, I said, those poor suckers. Why would I say that, folks? I'm anticipating something here because of not stop making sense, and it only makes sense really in one or two ways. And I'll take the biggest wave. Right after they started getting arrested, there was also then there's reports for this is a coup now. They're taking over the government. The president already knows it's a small faction, and they already know who they are. This is supposed to be a surprise attack, remember? And then another video right after they show these from far away, all these soldiers being recollected up and arrested by the police. No tank firing a shot in the pictures we saw for the bridges. No arms being discharged there in the surrender. Not even a fight. These are supposed to be trained military people up against so-called civilians, police forces. You think they could do a little bit of damage if they're really in earnest to go after something. If they were told to go after something. The next thing we see is the governor, rightly, by Mustafa's interpretation, rightly admonishes arrested putschists, these are the overthrowers. How did you fire on civilians, the governor asks. Are you not Turkish soldiers? Another anomaly. If they were throwing over the government, they wouldn't be Turkish soldiers, would they? Why would he be saying that? How did you fire on civilians? He's asking, why did you fire on civilians? The only sense I could make of that is because how could you fire on civilians? You were just told to go hold the bridge. Why would you fire on the civilians? Are you not Turkish soldiers? Well, if they're still Turkish soldiers, they're still Turkish soldiers. They're not overthrowers. And that's when it started to click a little bit clearer if you're already here with me and you anticipate the future here with what's gone on. It was a plan. These soldiers were told to go take the bridge as an exercise. How could you fire on civilians? You were just told to go hold a bridge. And then you started firing on people as they started to come in and invade you. Aren't you Turkish? Don't you have a Turkish bone in your body that you'd shoot on your own civilians? In other words, we sent you to the bridge. You weren't supposed to shoot anybody. And right after that, we've got what? Obama popping up. Obama sides with Islamic Erdogan government over the moderates. Military attempted a coup today in Turkey. The military released a statement saying that they had taken over the government. Well, it was supposed to be just a faction of the government, right? So there's the rest of the government. These people that were going to be attacking the government had to fight their own military if that's the case, don't you think? You think they'd be ready to be ready for a fight instead of being afraid of some police, civilian police? So Obama's right in on it. He's taking sides on this issue. Why? This would be a really concerning matter. Why would you take sides? I mean, you'd want to be quiet because you don't know who's going to win, because you want to make sure that you have some diplomatic lines into them to be able to talk with them. They could destabilize your whole game plan if you're not sitting in the right position. So they must have known this thing was pretty much over, right? It was over before it got started. There wasn't really a fight going on. Yes, we're hearing some people die, but remember, Erdogan's been telling us everything. The government has been telling us everything. It was the pro-government news that was telling us everything, giving us the numbers, giving us everything that was going on, showing us the pictures. We only see a few of the soldiers being admonished for, why are you shooting civilians? You weren't told to shoot civilians. You were told to hold the bridge. Why would you shoot a civilian? Seems to me the governor knew there was supposed to be a tank there, but they weren't supposed to raise it up to the point they were shooting people. And based on that surprise story that I got from Hans Grun, who I follow on the Twitter, I said, it's starting to look like it won't surprise me to find out this was a false flag by Erdogan himself. Because at that point, I'm starting to realize all these things and the dynamic and the geopolitics of all this thing, that he would be the beneficiary of everything that would happen if he wasn't to lose. Even though it was predicted by the experts 6 months ago, and all the experts agreed there would be a coup of some sort, they didn't expect him to win, and yet here he is. He's going to be on top. That nothing, he wasn't going to lose now, and there was nothing that could come out of here that would make him look bad. He had no downside. None. Zero, folks. Just think. I was thinking this through. There's just no downside to this action. That it started to become very clear, and I said so here. I did it in the form of a question because I was still looking at some other things, but it won't surprise me, and it doesn't, to find out, because we still don't know, we may never know, that Erdogan did this as a false flag to protect himself on a number of levels. Actually unify his nation a little bit better, remove what may have been an actual coup as well. And I think Hans Grun came back and said, perhaps that's what they did. They have avoided another style coup. And I said, I haven't answered him yet, I haven't had a chance, but I say that's exactly what it was done for, at least one part. There's a whole bunch of parts that this guy pulled this off, folks. The only thing I can figure out right now is we are either witnessing in Erdogan, he has just raised international gamesmanship to new heights and levels, or he is the luckiest fool ever to hold a political office. Talk about wallowing in it. This guy was handed everything he needed. I can't find a downside to what happens here. That just shows me more, and again, this was a plan that he executed. I don't intend to him, I don't ever view someone to be the fool in the first instance. He's playing a game in the geopolitical sector and holds his office for 10 years, not because he's a nice guy. That it came to me very with this substantive review of what people on the ground there interpreted. They were interpreting counter to what our experts were saying. That he would fall due to a coup, that in fact the coup would make him stronger, the coup attempt would make him stronger, and that he was prevailing almost immediately. He had it all worked out. There was too much going on that he had planned it. Now, how could he pull this off? Well, isn't it really easy for him, he's the commander-in-chief, to direct his army, his military, to have his army and military command their soldiers to go wherever they needed to do to make it look like whatever they wanted to? Why I said earlier, these soldiers really been getting the shaft. They were told to go sit on a bridge. That's what the governor said. We just told you to go sit on a bridge. Why'd you shoot people? Then it comes out today that the Turkish soldiers thought the coup, so-called, was a military exercise. I didn't find the original leak I found, but there was a Twitter that actually had this a day ago. That the soldiers, when they got captured, they thought that they were just going on a military exercise. There wasn't it was like a drill for them. And so this is pointing again to the internal decision by Erdogan and their military for national security purposes to make this look like a coup. It's a false flag. I think saw a Twitter go through earlier. It's the Reichstag here. They did this to themselves. Erdogan did this to himself. And now what does he get to do? He gets to confine civil rights. He gets to purge any officer. He's done this before. Now he's got another reason to purge any officer that doesn't think anything that has any consideration against him. He gets to get rid of the questionable ones. And he's given absolute license to do whatever he wants and how he needs to do it. He's got the support of the people. He's got the support of the military that saw this. And he trumped whatever coup may have been coming from outside. I cannot see him suffering a coup now for quite a long time. He is now fully in control of getting rid of anybody who was a question. And where do I go back to the point about saying that if I was someone who understood that a coup could happen, I'd expect a coup happen? Because coups happen all the time in that place. Turkey coup attempt was no surprise to the experts. Tensions have increased between the military and the government in a country that saw 3 coups in 3 decades. An attempted military coup in Turkey's overnight Friday was preceded by signs the government and the military were about to clash, particularly over policy in Syria, Turkish weekly reports. But is that true? See, we're only told the experts knew that. I mean, they're just used to a coup. All the experts were, and even the one in alternative media. But the prediction that was being promoted was that Erdogan would fall, and then he doesn't. And what does this guy Erdogan do? He blames this other guy named Gulen. That came out right from the beginning. And so, talking with friends, I said, don't be surprised that they blame it on this guy, and this guy's answer has to be back to Erdogan. The gameplay is he'd have to tell them that Erdogan did it. Well, I'm already feeling that Erdogan done it. I wasn't there. I didn't know. I've been up at the fly on the wall to tell you. But this was brilliant from a gameplay standpoint. Or there's a fool that's the luckiest fool in the world that sits in a political office in this world ever. And so what happens is the dynamic plays out. U.S.-based cleric Gulen suggests Turkey coup may have been staged. And so you see this gameplay going on. I don't know who these players are. I don't know how close they're working for. I don't know who the allies still are. He was an ally to Erdogan. Erdogan blames him. He calls out Turkey for calls out Erdogan for pulling it off himself. The question now hits the media that we might read about it, the Daily Mail. Did Erdogan stage the coup? U.S.-based Turkish cleric facing extradition over botched rebellion claims president orchestrated plot to justify the clampdown on civil rights. So he tells a little bit more of the process. They're now exposing the process of how they're doing it to y'all, wherever you live. So while we get all bogged down in who done it and the Erdogan and he now prevails and this and that, folks, there's a dynamic in the world that we may be completely unaware of. The earmarks of this is that Erdogan done it. He done it to himself. He done it to himself to solidify and unify his position, to make him even stronger, to give him more power. He trumped whatever other coup would have happened had it been available, if it is available. If he had 2 Israeli allies in officers' positions, they're gone now. Whatever numbers of people we see are soldiers that were involved, they could just be getting a talking to. They could tell you, be told this is national security. You keep your mouth shut and go back to your positions. You'll never hear about this. So this, to my mind, this was really brilliant gameplay, given it was a dynamic that was planned. It didn't play, again, the analysis by the anomalies got me to understand this at least a day before the news hit, that this appears to be what's going on. In other words, I'm not telling you that I thought that that Erdogan did it because I now see that Gulen says so. I said for myself about 24 hours before that Erdogan did it, and he's going to blame it on Gulen, and Gulen's only play would be to tell everybody that Erdogan did it. And then the news hits the stand, and that's exactly what's going on right here. Do we know exactly what happened? Well, no, actually we don't. But if we don't if we underestimate the fact that Erdogan done it, we underestimate what all the leaders will do to all of us. They don't care that they kill a few civilians. They don't care that a couple soldiers are fodder. They don't care that a couple people go swinging by the neck until dead. They don't care if it keeps them in power. Machiavelli and the Prince kind of rings in my mind right here. They don't care as long as it keeps them in power. You are nothing to these psychopaths. Nothing. And there's no plan or device that can be constructed and thought of that isn't on the table to be done. And our old, my little bleeding heart, why did people die, and the civilians, and the blood and gore, and why did all this? They don't care. That's my weakness, and from their perspective, and probably yours too. If you care against a psychopath, you're going to lose. They have a plan, you don't. You're going to sit back and worry about certain things. Wring your hands. They don't care. They're working on the next thing to take control of and keep control. They keep it, folks. How come you didn't? When they took it, why didn't you wrest it back? This is the world we actually live in. Tell me, I know I get these comments in the chat. Well, you shouldn't have. Well, the little guy in me is shocked. And I know a bunch of people in the chat room will say I shouldn't be shocked. Well, you're right, I shouldn't be, but I am. There's a little guy in me that wanted to be innocent in the world and believe that we were handling it, and we're not. And that's more of not necessarily a shock, more than a deep sadness. And so this is again proof that if you don't have a plan, someone else does. And even when you have a plan, it better be better than the other guy that outdoes you. So you have to anticipate being outdone. We aren't to the level as people yet to be able to actually live in peace. I'm not saying anything new there. You won't shock nobody, but we should expect better for ourselves, and we should do better for ourselves, that we don't. And my sense is, of all the ways I could probably come up with to discuss all these things, I've turned to crickets. You become the cricket slayer in you, and maybe the world becomes just a little bit better. So I believe at this point, until I see different, the U.S. was surprised. Russia had nothing to say. They came back with zero. Israel's not speaking at all. The world wants to come and condemn the coup. That supports Erdogan some more. And this guy comes out smelling like a rose as a white knight, and he's I don't know. He's doing what he has to do, I suppose. You saw how much he tried to thug on Europe and extort billions out of them. And guess what? Today he's still standing, and he's standing taller, and he's got support around him, and now he's got people looking for a coup. So if NATO had anything that they were going to pull, or Israel or Russia or any of these people, they've got a whole bunch more eyes looking to protect him. And this psychopath is now stronger, more in like the tick that he is, doing what a psychopath does. I think, really, I'd rather appreciate the fact that his brilliance of handling this. This guy is not someone you want to underestimate. But we just witnessed, I think, a pretty cool gameplay. I think we need to pay attention. Why I talk to you is not because I wanted to go through all what I came up with through the Twitters and how I figured it out, more than to say that I came up through that by finding the anomalies. There are people where you live that, on very petty things, put their mind and do the very same thing to undermine your life. And let me touch something else then as well. And you see this failure when you see a failure of the law, so-called. I don't want to diminish that. The law, so-called, when I add that condition, it seems to be a moving target anymore. But the law was merely the objective basis by which all of us would look in upon those agreeing to live in a society that had the law, that we would use that objective basis to hold a standard, a bar of conduct that was good or bad, and by having that objective written bar of conduct, the law, we would get away and take away the despot or the tyrants abstract, capricious action that may be based on a personal feeling. That's what the law is supposed to be held to. Now, I'm not talking about the New Age stuff, this reflexive nonsense. I'm talking about substantive law. This, what you're, notwithstanding, thou shalt not kill sounds, and okay, that should be in anybody. Well, it is, but see, as a society, we've realized that we have to give notice to everybody, and once you give them notice, then there's no excuse. That gives the other parties the right for remedy. Without it, there's no standard and there's no ability to provide remedy that can't be complained about being excessive somehow. And so this is not just some artificial thing. We've had to make this because of our fallen nature. It gives us a place. We give notice of for as stupid as it sounds, you all think, you should know not to kill somebody, but don't tell Erdogan that. Don't tell Obama that, the peace Nobel laureate that he is. Don't tell him that. Bush, don't tell him that. And then you see the failure when you try to apply it. They're like Teflon. This is the lawlessness of the world being shown to yourself by the people and the psychopaths in power protecting themselves. That should not be okay. Now, principally, you sit back and say it's not okay, but it is okay when you don't step up. You don't slay the cricket within and go out and stop and slay the psychopath or the sociopath or whoever is the wrongdoer. Not by your opinion, but by this law that we have passed that says that they are. In other words, as I tell you, an official coming in the capacity of official without a warrant in law to interfere with your rights and property and interests, or handing those rights and property interests without the warrant in law to a third party is a crime. Without that little statement, there wouldn't be common notice of what that was, and without that little statement, you have no standard to place on someone when they've done that to you. That it's written down, we all can see, oh, that's right, that's what we did say. Over time, over generations, it stayed the same. That activity was actionable. To this definition, it's called the law. And so this is when we see the law not applied, you sense the huge, the monstrous injustice. Sometimes that's all you get. You just feel bad because you see how wrong it is and there's no justice. And we're in just us. Just cause. Doesn't exist. It's just cause. So we start losing our foundation of how we will respond to get a remedy from these people, because there's nobody to impose it and there's no standard to impose. That these psychopaths like Erdogan, those don't matter. See, these guys under national security excuse, the imperative necessity, it removes all those rules, and they can do whatever they want. All those soldiers, whether or not they're going to be interpreted to be the coup promoters, as they were called by Erdogan himself real early on, coup promoters. This is just nation-state discussion on how they're going to define the people that they've targeted. Whether or not those soldiers get actual jail time or death to prove a point, to put a bigger scare in the rest of the society or not, we will never know about the truth of that. If they don't get anything, and we can find out about that, we'll wonder why. But we're never going to get the answer to this. What I suggest to you, though, who was the one that benefited? Absolutely, in my mind, Erdogan, to no downside. How'd this play out? Under his control, the entire thing. The information was controlled. Where the people went to go do things was controlled. There was a small amount of uncontrollable stuff. That's the chaos within the new movement that no one understands. But ultimately, the whole thing was already as I was watching the news even. He was saying it was a small faction and it was already controlled. They knew going in it was controlled. It was a fact. This guy is a brilliant player on the gamemanship of the world. He's a very dangerous man. And I say that if he's doing good stuff, I mean, I've never had to do anything where people die around what I'm doing in order to get something accomplished, but certainly he does. All these leaders do that. People die around what they do. Just that alone can't be something that we could support, and yet we remain crickets to it. So I guess that's, I don't know. I see lots of people going through the analysis now of what happened. To me, this was a play by Erdogan to solidify his power base, to solidify his control, to eliminate people in the government that he had questions. He had no other easy way to get at them. He's now got at it. He can go at everybody now. He can get the people rallied around the attack on the nationalism. Remember, we talked about nationalism and the danger of nationalism this year and going into next year and the next year. That nationalism is going to be becoming the thing, the ring in everybody's nose. This is what's happening right here. What I've been talking to you about behind the woodshed is over time it comes around. It comes back to show us. Why? Not because I'm saying something new and insightful and anticipation. I'm only anticipating the reoccurrence of the past. That was being aware, having experience, seeing the stuff, putting two and two together, working through it. You see, the history will repeat itself until someone steps up and says, we've had enough of that. So what we allow to continue continues. If you want good in your life, promote good in your life. Denounce to a destructive level the bad as best as you can. Where you find the wrong, make it right. Or make it righter. Maybe you don't have it all together. Maybe you can only do a little bit. That's enough. So Erdogan, I think this is a brilliant play. I'm fascinated by it. I think for me, it just looked like a new level of gameplay in the geopolitics. To actually pull a false flag, but what he covers in how he protects himself is so comprehensive. It's amazing at some level. As much as I want to denounce the bad guy, this guy outdone the bad guys, it seems, at this point. Now, he may be called out for it. So I don't know what the outfall of that part is, but up until today is almost, to me, and I'm going to accept the position that he done it, it was predictable by the action in the moment, not by looking at what we were told, but looking at the anomalies within what we were told. Produces his hand, absolutely controlling this, his masterful hand at controlling the entire condition. Don't think that it was a perfect thing that he cares about. He doesn't worry that people die, that people get hurt, that people may hang until dead, that people be executed for being spies. He doesn't care. Those can be lies. They'll still be hung. They'll still be shot. They'll still be dead. But the man is in power still. That's what his option was. And if it was a national security thing, his military knows that. Again, just a small clique of the military was told to go hold the bridges. It was just an exercise to them. Makes sense now to me why there was really no guns on the bridge and the Bosphorus Bridge, and why the tanks were in the wrong spots, it appeared to me. Why they were coming in surrendering. What were they there for? Why you only see small groups of soldiers being admonished for shooting civilians? Well, they were the ones that were shooting civilians. They got excited. They didn't go so good. They felt they were being attacked, so they started shooting. But the people were called out to go stand on the tanks. I mean, what are you going to do? If this is a military exercise, what do we do now? I can kind of play that out in some soldier's mind. He's just told to go to exercise. Now he's being attacked. And then as some word comes in that this is a real coup, he doesn't know that he's the one they're focusing on. So, interesting little play. I'm just kind of... I'm appreciative of how much I don't know in this venue. I use it to try to explain to me things that are going on that are invisible to me, that transparency part. I think this guy just raised that bar even more. I don't know if I can keep up with it, because it's really it's really big skullduggery. It's not a place for me either, but I think it's important to see the breadth and depth and comprehension of what people do and what it takes to keep control of you. Whether or not you end up doing that is irrelevant to the point that someone else will do it to you. And that's what I think really drives me to even talk more about this, as to the point in the length of time I have. Watching this thing go through, being able to analyze it. If I'm wrong, no sweat off my nose, right? But if I'm right, and I disregard what I've been identified, that happens around me, I'm vulnerable to that weakness. I'm vulnerable to just dismissing these things based on ignorance, essentially, and in a willful ignorance, not wanting to delve into the fact that there are people in the world, they may not be as high as Erdogan, but their little fiefdom where they think is their little control center, they're doing this to you. They have their minions, they have their army, they have their soldiers, and they are out there working 24/7 to keep whatever little bitty power they have that they've found that they think is important to them. And I say it that way because I see it all over the place when we deal with the government. Not all the people in government do this, but there's enough out there that are running those people that are just doing their job, literally just doing a job, nothing more than them. They think they're doing it very well, and they do their part very well, but their part is played into a bigger nefarious condition. And without this law, this objective basis that we've made amongst us to allow us to say that part was a crime and that part requires remedy, dismissing that power in law is going to be a problem for us. That's why I've said I've kind of learned, for me, I'm better to go back in and say, okay, we had some things we've done right. Why don't we just keep doing those right? Let's not make it let's not throw everything out when we heave this gargantuan crime upon us. We throw it all out. Some of that is good. They were using that. They used the good parts to get us to buy into what they were doing. Erdogan's done this as well. So I'm astonished that the media, so-called alternative media, would promote having predicted that Erdogan was going down, and the coup that was going down was the one they predicted, and then it wasn't. I'm astonished at how adept this Erdogan guy is to create what he has done in order to solidify everything he needed to be done, and maybe more. I don't know it all, I just know what I can see, and how well he's outdistanced anybody who was going to attempt to do so, to take him out. So the coup that was predicted is actually twice wrong. I think the only thing that's going to take him out is going to be the master game player here, if he's to be taken out. So enough there. A fascinating development. I think we just witnessed one of the highest gamesmanships we could see. The outcome of that will be depending on how the other games players will play off, and the Gulen guy is doing what he has to in order to protect himself and to he has to essentially speak the truth right now to out Erdogan in order to protect himself. And so we're going to be able to be witness to that. But please appreciate what the dynamic is here. In a smaller way, it's happening to you where you live. Somebody somewhere is taking something from you, putting some imposition upon you, and they're using these techniques, having a knowledge. You can hear it in their words. They have a knowledge, but they're trying to tell you that they don't. They're trying to be in the right place at the right time. You wonder why. How'd you get there? How'd you even know to be there? They've got the people that come in to help them out. The little spies come in. It all works the same way. But I think we just saw a different level. So just fascinating to me how that played out, how everybody was wrong about it, how he trumped everybody's expectation, even the experts, and how well he's positioned at this point, up until we see now the dynamic between the contest between those that he claims was a coup against the nation and to destroy a democracy. Notice it's not about him. He says it's about the democracy and the people, and then the outsiders say, no, you planned that. And so there's going to be now the pitch battle between winning the minds and hearts of people between that discussion. And that I don't know about. That'll be dependent on what people want to be becoming aware to. One thing we can become aware to, moving on, British shuts down its global warming agency. That's what the title was, but if you read very carefully, it only shut down part. But this is a big thing. British shuts down its global warming agency. They have reduced its capacity. They have changed its purpose. They've moved it into other sectors. If you read this in the blogcaster, the section, or go to the link and read it, you'll see where they're moving climate change is exactly where they need to move it. What they're doing here, this is the chameleon changing its spots, but in fact the outward department has been abolished in the UK regarding global warming. The U.S. Republicans vote down funding for global climate fund as well, happening all within about the same week or so, I think. maybe 2 weeks. I can't remember now. It's all the stuff just flies right through here. House Appropriations Committee on Tuesday voted down a Democratic push to allow federal spending on international climate change programs. So why are we spending our money on international stuff and the fraud anyway? But so, right, it's consistent. Britain tones theirs down. The United States doesn't want to fund that climate change. You'd think that if it's such an impending doom, you'd want to, but no, they don't want to do it that way. It's no different than the anomaly called Obama, the Nobel laureate, using drones to kill people without due process. It's the same nonsense. Another fraud, as I was telling you, with this Russia, the Baltic brass being changed up by Putin, and the very real reason why they're doing this, the boots on the water, the flippers in the water, the real potential of war that's happening. We jump to the other side. Another fraud is being called out. China lashes out at Washington-led conspiracy after the Hague decision that diminished their rights. This is coming to a head, folks. These countries aren't going to stand for this nonsense. The China called this decision as Washington-led conspiracy in the Hague a farce. Don't underestimate this lack of justice in the rule of law, democracy, control of the world. China's not going to have it. They keep pushing this stuff. It's just going to ramp these things up. I told you, be cautious on. There's nothing you can be cautious about. If they decide to go crazy, it's going to go crazy. It's because of this nonsense that's been the fraud that's been perpetrated on people, and we all peoples stand quiet against it. So Russia's trimming up. China's not having these Zio West rulings. Remember the Hague ruling, Hague Convention. Remember, that's the rule of law stuff. That's Lieber Code 1907. We're talking almost always military occupation, military law. Remember, they don't declare martial law, folks. All of you haven't heard that before. None of you tuning in, thank you for tuning in for the first time or second time, whatever you are. Thank you very much. If you haven't heard this, there's a military consequence to this world, and the law of war says they don't have to declare. There's nothing they have to declare to install martial law. And believe me, Erdogan's doing it right now. There's no martial law. In fact, they said they stopped a coup, and now they're going to install martial law. They don't. What you're looking for, what they do, not what they say. What am I saying? You have to do. Stop saying, go do. Become your own occupation on the occupier. Do it smartly or intelligently. Forget the smart stuff. It's all digital occupation. But the Hague ruling that China has no legal claim to most of the South China Sea. The authorities have taken the media to proclaim their disdain for the decision. The South China Sea arbitration, a U.S.-led conspiracy behind the farce, is something that they're not going for. They realize the control the United States has on all this. The international law violations are mentioned. If you don't think that this is going to be, when you feel injustice, folks, because you look at the just us system, how do you feel? Put that as, make yourself a nation that you really are, but make yourself a nation that has a territory to protect and the threat that is, and then you magnify it by a couple billion, and you tell me how you feel. This is the game being played right now. Not very cool, not very fun. But there's climate change a farce. The Hague stuff is a farce. The UN's a farce. When are we going to call it out, and when are we going to do something about it? I tell you, you can do something about the UN imposition locally. The World Bank toolkits will tell you how to overthrow your own government if you wanted to use them. Why don't you go back in and look how they did that, and go back and do the same thing, and you can figure out how to take back your own government. You do it peacefully. See, I didn't waste my time on all that. We just went back to the law, the obligations and duties, and we seem to work a lot faster. But that doesn't matter. If you need a guidance, and it can't be me, I'll tell you, I'll send you. Go to the World Bank. They'll give you a toolkit on how to subvert your government. I say take that toolkit. That's how they've done it to you. Undo it by the same method. This is not that hard. So Russia's not going to have it. China's not having it. I've told you this behind the woodshed. Be cautious of what's going on. The United States is blundering its way through. If NATO and the United States got caught by Erdogan, I think they're the fourth largest military in the world. How adept do you think they are, folks? I mean, this is a serious potential consequence. I don't care that the United States is the biggest, baddest brute. If we're making stupid decisions or not being aware of capacities of the so-called enemy or even the ally, we are in some trouble. So not only are we putting ourselves at risk, we're not working toward our better day either. And so what comes but the plan the globalist governannies have for us? It comes that way anyway, see? Because they have a plan. And they are doing with that plan the plan. And you have none. And so I've tried to come here to offer you those observations to try and show you this is how the professionals do it to take us out. You better up your game so that you can stop it. And if you don't, they take you out. Erdogan's plan took out whatever other coup there was, short of a master player better than him. As I tell you before, I look around, I'm concerned to some level to not get so arrogant about what I know that I allow myself to drop my guard and watch someone who has just enough knowledge, or more knowledge than I do, take me out in my positioning, whatever we're doing, be able to defeat what the work that we've done. I'm very leery about getting too so-called big-headed, always looking for more information, always looking for a next edge, always anticipating who I might be dealing with, trying to figure out what they understand and what they know, whether or not what they know is what they're telling me is a lie or not enough, so they're hiding something. It's amazing what you have to think about when you start to come up against these people, but this is the world as we know it right now, and it's because we always had to do this, and somehow along the line, the last few generations, it's been told to us that we didn't. This guy Erdogan tells us that we did, that Putin is coming up to do something, tells us that we should have. That China is not putting up with it now over this Hague Convention and outing another farce, another insurrection within the international order is something you have to pay attention to. They're doing it to you where you live. They'll lie to you right to your face. And we all go, yeah, he's lying, and then we turn our gaze. But that's not good enough. I wish it was, but it's not. Someone else, I just talk about one candidate and go the other way. Another farce is on us. We're in some trouble, folks, just generally. This election, I think we're seeing the demise of America generally. And I know we've been going down the slippery slope, but I think the writing is on the wall to the absoluteness of this. There was a story that came out about farces and frauds and what you're told, and having to look through it. And I told you I'm on record. I think Trump is far left of the Rhino Con Clinton. It doesn't matter which way we go here. The rhetoric from not even rhetoric, but the statements from Trump speak to your emotions as someone who was a nationalist. Clinton speaks to the power of the government and the military. And so you got your choices, but been kind of holding out. Maybe if we're gonna have to pick the choice, if there's gonna be a choice that y'all are gonna make, because you think you have a choice to make, and it's not by someone else, but called the elector that's actually gonna make this choice. If you think you have a say, we would like to at least get our direction going. I said, be careful even going to Trump, even though he sounds like he says he wants to make America great again. America is great already. It's great, the greatest butcher, the greatest plunderer, the greatest bully, the greatest brute there is in the world. So I think that was a lie to start with. It's all great and not good things, though. And he wants to make, build that wall. That's a waste of energy. First of all, waste of expenses. He's going to get someone else to pay it. That's just the words of a brute. But anyway, he comes up and he hasn't called out a VP of a vice president. Kind of wondering how this guy thinks and what he's about, trying to figure out ways to tell you all how he's not going to be what he is. And I think we just found maybe the biggest one. Donald Trump postpones naming the running mate. Happened to come out at a certain time that he was going to name him, but the Nice attack in France came up, and then he couldn't. And now see, there should have been no relation, but so he backs off. The Nice attack, so-called. A whole other story about all that, but I'm not going to even touch that one. He postpones his announcement for the vice president, and then he names one. The guy he chooses is called Mike Pence. He's a governor of Indiana as his running mate. It wasn't just minutes after but actually before, since the time of the postponement and the time of his announcement came this story, that Governor Pence urges congressional delegation to support trade promotion authority and trade agreements. How often have you heard Trump say that he wasn't for trade deals? Trade deals were no good. His vice president is an embracer, promoter, and a champion of these trade deals. In a letter sent to the members of the Indiana congressional delegation today, Governor Mike Pence urged them to support Trade Promotion Authority, TPA, legislation, as well as the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, and the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the TTIP, and the TPA legislation is expected to be introduced and considered in Congress later this year, clearing the path forward for future consideration of TPP and TTIP. Folks, how is this guy Trump, who is this guy Trump to claim he's an anti-trade deal and then pick a globalist for his running mate? That is exactly what I've been suggesting is his problem. And you can't trust any of these people. Those of you that weren't going to vote for him, it doesn't matter to you. Those of you going to vote for Hillary, you're glad to see it. Those of you are going to thinking about Trump, those that you're going to not vote at all, it doesn't matter. Those that want to vote for Trump, who are you going to go to now? What are you going to do? Like somebody, I can't remember who it was. Oh, I'm going to go. Oh, Ventura. He's worthless time as well. Oh, I'm going to vote the Green Party. You going to vote a party? They're all the same, folks. All these people are to do this. So Trump comes out anti-trade deal, and now he has a VP of this trade deal. What do you think is going to happen here, folks, when this guy goes in? Complete anomalies in office. And so if you don't agree with me, and those of you that are bent toward this, a side, conservative, liberal, whatever, I thought this was a straight-up prediction. It was pretty straightforward by someone who I've heard people don't like, and some people do like. To me, I could care less. The words made sense to me. My VP prediction, Trump's first mistake. And this was written by Ann Coulter. Is that, I think, her name? And her, right out the first line, I won't read more but just this. My vice presidential prediction is Trump is about to make his first mistake. And then she goes about and lays out almost more, because I'm not politically wired, she lays out even more about why this is a big problem. So she sees this big problem. The president nominee, his first mistake is making his first decision on who to run with. She sees it. I thought her insight was correct here for the most part, and so I'm including it because this was something people were looking for. The guy can't make the right decision. I just think he just make a rookie mistake. That's the Apprentice decision. He's fired, folks. He didn't even get out the gate with his first decision. And so the only remaining, because Bernie was not real principled, agreeing to support a felon in a nominee in Hillary, we're looking at organized crime still. That's your choice. Well, unless you go to the giant meteor 2016, and I'm kind of leaning that way. In fact, I was actually crossed my mind. I'm wondering, it wouldn't be for me, it'd be about the meteor, but no one would vote for me, right? But I think I want to change my name to Giant Meteor 2016, so just in case it does win, by the time this November comes, I might be president by default, because I changed my name. What do you think? Maybe we all should change our name to Giant Meteor 2016. Maybe we would all vote for Giant Meteor 2016 then, and we would beat all the political parties. And then we would all claim the mantle of being the president, at least up until 2017. Oh, wait a minute. That was when we take the oath of office. And we're done already. There is no life on earth. This is the reality game show they have us in, folks. We see right out of the gate that no decision can be made that's proper. It's a conundrum problem in the most simple, but it's actually the truth. This guy Trump, he's going to be pushing the globalist condition, no matter what he says. Hitler, the RhinoCon, She's certainly going to be pushing that. Bernie, not principled at all. In other words, it was a plan that he was going to have all his followers default to Hillary. But see, when she got found out to be the criminal that she is, by the findings of the corrupt cabal of the FBI and the DOJ, he came right after that and agreed to put his certificate of approval on her after he knew that. This guy's got no principles at all. These are the types of quality of people you're dealing with. So I'm really, not that I'm going to be voting for it, but it did cross my mind. I think I'm going to change my name to the Giant Meteor 2016, and I want you all to vote for the Giant Meteor 2016, and maybe we'll get something done. At least if I survive the catastrophe I'm going to put on the earth, we'll at least know why the government's so screwed up. U.S. approves UN U.S. use of force to protect civilians in conflict. Wanted to report this. This was actually super big news. I didn't report it last week. I had it. If y'all survived the 90s and the Patriot thing in the 90s, you heard about all this stuff coming. So I've been watching for it. And all the white cars you see when all the law enforcement went to white cars, that was the sign, because there's a law somewhere, and I can't remember where it is, that all white cars would be accessible to the UN for UN vehicles for purposes of implementation to protect civilians in conflict. That it was clear to me that if you have a white car, government start buying white cars, and this happened right after the bill happened. They actually started buying lots of white cars. You saw a lot of government cars turned white. That's kind of softened up a bit in the last decade. But still they're out there. These were clearly going to be vehicles that we thought at the time were going to be a quicker infiltration, at least the first, put a few UN cars into the mix so we get used to them. But here's the fact of it now. The UN approved, the U.S. approves UN use of force to protect civilians in conflict. This means, folks, as another subsequent article came out, that the U.S. also approves the United Nations use of military force on American soil. So, where does that put us in the global partnership, right? There is no sovereignty. They've been telling us that. The UN is a use of force to protect civilians, tells you you're in a military consequence, folks. I've been telling you this for years and years and years. They stick you in from a military perspective. You should be paying attention to that. You don't have to declare martial law. You're living in a military consequence. The United States just approves UN use of force. Use of force, folks? Is that what your Constitution provides? I hear crickets on this thing. Did the United States, whoever did this, have the authority to allow a force to protect the civilians in a conflict in their country? You see how off the rail everything? You see where law should be followed? We have to really get to the nitty-gritty black and white to make sure that people don't take arbitrary and capricious extension on their authorities. See, without these things written in law, we wouldn't be able to say, hey, you went too far. So what the lawyers did is they deny, and then they make an extension that looks like it's a little bit different. Oh, we're not underneath that, we're over here. My point on that would be, well, were you paid as a government official, were you paid to do something not under the constraint of that Constitution? So you have to have a word in your mouth about how to trap these people. So the United States has announced support for a set of principles that give a green light for UN peacekeeping troops and police to use force to protect civilians in armed conflicts. Folks, any so-called humanitarian crisis now becomes an invasion principle. You really have to look at what these things are doing here. They've really got a handle on what they need to do to get forward this UN agenda, break down your borders, get people to forget the Constitution's limited form of government for the United States of America, the property laws, all this stuff. United States Ambassador Samantha Power told a high-level UN meeting Wednesday focusing on the responsibility to protect civilians that the United States was proud and humbled to join 28 other countries that have pledged to abide by the 18 pledges. UN peacekeepers from the 29 countries are now required to act in cases where civilians are in danger. Your world is a military condition, folks. You're a civilian. And they have authority to go into these other countries as well. The United States is one of them. You remember, the UN peacekeeping troops are the ones that they're now found to have been rapists and murderers. The UN is the conduit for how the United States takes down places. Remember, I think it was the Republic of Congo. Oh, we can come in and keep peace. The next thing they knew, the United States was taking out, they were taking out the Republic of Congo, which was replicating itself as the epitome of the United States. It was replicating itself to be the United States. It was taken down. We were right there. The United States of America was right there using the UN peacekeeping conduit to do so. And there's so many other proofs of this, all since the establishment of the UN, underneath the idea a long time before, 20, 30 years, the League of Nations. Right after the institution of your fiscal policies, the United States of the Federal Reserve, and then the extension into the world money and the Bank of International Settlements eventually. All these things we've been talking about. U.S. approves UN use of force to protect civilians in the United States. Should bother you, folks. It should bother you. Who is the authority to do that? Where was the constitutional authority to do that? Let me ask you a different way. If they are proud and humbled, as the United States, a little district over there in Washington, D.C., have they not just abdicated and said they were not capable to protect their citizens as a consequence? You just have the fuel there, the list of problems that they have just developed for themselves, the cause which should have them thrown out of their position, impeached or criminally charged. See, it's what I told you a long time ago with when they made Battlefield America. The government admitted it just committed treason. Its duty was to not allow that to happen. U.S. approves United Nations use of military force on American soil. How do you feel about that, folks? How do you feel your government can't even protect you, that it has to rely on the UN? Against you! Remember all this nonsense, is like this gender inequality nonsense. That becomes a civilian problem. It becomes a threat against civilians. All these little things they've been developing. Now the UN, you think you're going to have some military troops come in and not want to shoot Americans? We've been talking about this since the 90s. No, they're going to have some international body come in. They don't care about not shooting you, raping you, murdering you, stealing from you, using you as slave. They don't care. Where's the accountability on top of that? Look at what's not happening, folks, around all this. Look at the lack of safeguards that have not been produced, that the United States, Samantha Powers, was humbled and proud to support. There's really a big disconnect in this country. I don't even know if I fully appreciate how big the disconnect is, because I started thinking, what else do I don't know about how wrong this is? This is just simply wrong. But look at where all the objective basis we can point to, that if we didn't have that, we would have no clue about it. And over time, it's been proven, and I can see it in my time, they make you forget. You lose your memory. I'm one of the last of few people that understands the mining law, because I turned around at the right time and happened to see we're about to forget that. Me and a few people I work with are the last memory of how the mining law really is supposed to work. I'm not saying that to aggrandize myself. It's the fact. It's the truth. 10 years ago, we were about to lose it. No one understood it. The government had beat out of the people, the miners, the knowledge of the law, so they could continue to bureaucratically plunder them, steal their stuff, put them in jail. They changed the law to a policy. And that policy is changeable to the military whim, the control. The law is important because it's written down and it makes a place where we can all point to that says that was the standard, not what you're doing. What you're doing is a crime. And you're lucky if we don't go to war crime here. as we were talking in the UCY chat on Ron Stevens or Stevens broadcast, and I put some things in the chat that he picked up on, but I didn't say that they were. I didn't present them as a discussion. I was really answering how my comments were in the chat to answer how you would respond to these people that are usurping your rights and property, and making claims and limiting the language to what they speak. You can identify them as a foreigner, actually, and you can. That's I kind of speak in an odd. I realize I speak in an odd way. I gave an answer, not a discussion. They prove they're a foreigner when they speak this way. They prove that you're not in that. That's that's an avoidance. You take that fact and make an avoidance. Then you put them in the wrong side and show how they had no right to come into your area, into your jurisdiction, or to show how they had. So at that point, I realized when I typed it in the response, I realized what I'm telling is an answer, which is really the foundational place that you have to act from. In other words, the words were not the act. What you're focused on is identifying when they speak like all this nonsense, when they do things that are outside the scope of a limitation. These people are foreigners. You can address them on that, and you can ask them, what is your authority to act that way, to say that? What money was paid to you to make that position under the Constitution? That's what we call the show cause. Show cause how you've complied and comported with the law by your action to do that. Doesn't it, on top of it, doesn't it take a treaty? Where was the official record that the United States itself was proud? It's an inanimate object on top of that. What are they doing in our mind when they speak this way? They personalize, I can't even use that word, I can't even use humanize. They peopleize these legal entities. Like the robots. They peopleize them. They make them like they have emotions. And they're just machines that are taking commands. If you don't think that I've been talking about the breaking down of borders and why borders sell jurisdictions are important, how you cross over with them, how it's illegal to come across a jurisdiction to get you. I mean, how long have we been told up until these multi-jurisdictional agreements that one sheriff couldn't go to the next county? I mean, even I think the Lavoy-Finicum thing over there, the Harney County thing, was the sheriffs were keeping separate. Cell walls are important. Jurisdictions are important. You've got to keep purity. Otherwise, chaos becomes, and those people that without the objective basis of the law, the set known response and what to expect in the world is destroyed. And here we have a breaking down. I've been talking to you about like the border, the UN breaks down everything without borders, doctors without borders, water without borders, animals, migration without borders. They want to destroy your jurisdictional purity. Here's another thing the United States just did. Not only do they agree that UN peacekeeping force can come in and protect you all civilians in a military consequence, they're also going to now allow proposing actually to allow foreign officials to serve warrants on internet firms. Where does that stop, folks? That foreign officials can serve a warrant on you. Boy, wouldn't Erdogan love that power? And the United States is proposing to allow it. Where do they get that right? See, the United States is supposed to be that intermediary. It's not supposed to determine that it's not going to be there to be the intermediary. It's no different than an entry agent. You come to the entry agent, then that entry agent then goes to the company. You don't let the foreign party go all the way directly to the agent, to the party. Where's your protection? Where's your expectation? This only relates to internet firms. It won't stop there, folks. Where do the United States have to allow a right to propose to allow a foreign official to serve a warrant? Remember, this is consistent. Well, I'm going to say that they don't. Except, let me remind you, I told you way back in, I think it was 2014, NDAA. And right before that, we were talking about Interpol was given the right to do rendition. Remember, I told you this was a serious, serious problem. I don't doubt that this is tied to that as well. that a foreign official can use Interpol to come and get you and pull you into their jurisdiction, and part of it was the danger of the use of the internet, wasn't it? Now they can serve warrants. Where's your border? Where's your law, folks? Is this universal law coming in? It's all reflexive, and it's all controlled by whom? The Bar Association, International Bar Association, IBAnet.org, IBAnet.org. Go look it up. It's it's also the advisor to the Holy See. This trade union, business crime, criminal justice is good business, folks. Now it's global, and it's got no borders to protect it and stop it. The United States proposes allowing foreign officials to serve warrants on internet firms. I don't know what more to say. That should just be a heart stopper. Oh, I'm not an internet firm. Who do I care? They get you through that there, folks. And it's not going to stop at internet. Just like the Interpol didn't stop at the internet, doesn't stop at the warrant, doesn't stop. It just renditions you wherever they want to put you. This is all happening right underneath our nose, folks. So all this other nonsense, this is happening. And there's a phone call that can be made here. There's a letter that can be written. There's show causes to find out how treason has not been committed in the interference with the judiciary here, notwithstanding its corruption. The allowance of foreign forces on our soil. What about how you all feeling about that, you vets? Where are you at? What'd you go fight for? What have you fought for? What was that inspiration in you? You think it's regarded here in these people? No, they're like Erdogan. They don't care. It's a cockistocracy, folks. The excrement rises to the top, and you pay for it. Whether you're silent or whether you're not, you're going to pay for it. But if in silence, you got no excuse, and you're going to pay for it. Who's the player of the United States? It's bully and brute now allowing it to Washington, D.C., allowing the breaking down of jurisdictions. Well, apparently another government, another jurisdiction, the same one that was getting out of the EU, I told you partly why. The UK Parliament report finds the U.S. allies are covertly funding ISIS. The United States is allies, it's accessory to the crime. Another story that all these nations are in together. If you think that there's going to be some kind of protection in the global military governanny that they're going to put all over you on a military condition, give it up, and you better turn your attention to it somewhere. The Parliament report finds the allies are covertly funding is us, I've called it. Is Israel, United States as well. Zio West. We hear nothing from it. We just hear that it happens. These are all the players. You think someone that's going to allow your foreign firms that are allowing what? As soon as they recognize these all of a sudden that foreign official wants to make a mess out of things, and now you can serve a warrant in your town? On your internet provider? Get Interpol to rendition you to their courts? I hope you see it's the EU of the globe happening here. And you don't get a choice, just like most all the people didn't get a choice except Brexit. They got a choice. And I said, but it doesn't end there. Even when they give you the choice, first of all, you knew the imposition was a threat. You didn't speak about that threat, did you? But then you said you didn't want to do it, and then the politics comes in and says, well, maybe a little bit. And then you don't find out there's another layer to the game that they needed you out. You needed to go Brexit. They get your buy-in so they can do something more dastardly to you. We're so out of the game loop, folks, it's really kind of scary. UK Parliament reports finding U.S. allies are covertly funding ISIS. We're accessory criminals, folks. We're accessory terrorists. If I didn't already call it, the United States is committing the war of terror. There's nothing here that's new, I guess, under the sun, and yet it's all new in how we can approach it. The evidence it provides to us that just is more, what should I say, the shame on us for not utilizing it, as I'm suggesting you have the right, authority, and duty and obligation to do so. It's right here handed to us if we would just go use it. The UK Parliament finds that the allies are in ISIS. That makes the United States an accessory. That makes the UK an accessory. That makes France an accessory to being a terrorism. The terrorists, folks. But I've already told you that the governments are the only ones that can be the terrorists. That's the definition of terrorism. Not the one that the terrorists have made, but the one that actually is the objective definition of the word. Not the term, the word. Theirs is a term. Their definition of terrorism is a term. Ours are words out of dictionaries. So we have all this knowledge coming to us. We have the frauds exposed. We have the players outed. They all seem to continue. And the problem we have is if we keep even looking at all that we start even learning this knowledge, we don't understand the ramifications. We don't take it to the next level to consider what it might mean. When you have a fraud exposed, what does that mean? A lot of times it just continues. But that's not even what I'm talking about. Not only does it mean you didn't respond and they continued the crime, what does it mean in the context of being able to understand the future to not do it again? To prepare for the thing you're not understanding may come to slap you upside the face, upside the head, because you didn't see that it might come from that direction, because you were told and you agreed with people that were lying to you this entire time. It becomes a narrowing field of help to come to you, and if you're not prepared, the response, the natural response, comes in such a great way that you're not going to survive on your own. And so this creates another style of interdependence that they want you on. The only thing I can see the difference is it's the interdependence of cause, and hopefully you have the right one. Otherwise, you might, again, you're going to be surprised by what happens. Let me go back. So the UK has found, the UK hasn't done their climate change. The United States is not funding climate change, but you know it's all been global warming. And so this fraud has been upon us. We now think it's all gone, and yet there's more evidence. I was telling you when I was being brought up, the big problem was it was going to go, and they had scientific studies on this, that we're going to go to, winter. The global ice age. Crippled Atlantic currents triggered ice age climate change. So here we got the government telling us that there was a fraud that they've been supporting, and they're not going to support it to the most extent anymore. But that doesn't stop the natural thing that we might turn our gaze away from now. That I've been telling you, like I said, if we go chemtrails, and if they are actually doing it, even if they're not, if they're just stuff in the now all of a sudden in the contrails, that we call chemtrails, this debris that comes out, these aerosols, that would cause and trigger an acceleration of an event that's known to be going into a colder segment. They say the triggering mechanism is the Atlantic currents. They say that claim that was the cause of climate change, so-called. So if you focus on the fraud and say, okay, now we know the fraud and the government's not going to buy into it no more, they aren't really not doing that either. You think that fraud is not having an effect. The consequence of that lie, the thing that lie was covering, is not going to happen. You're going to be surprised again. And they know that it's all that way, so their plans are in a way that their plans will handle that. Yours will not. So here the UK is coming up with the allies are coming out with outing the allies, and yet it's covering lie. They're lies that cover a truth. That truth still works. We cannot turn our attention. So here in this case, we're talking about the climate change. They're finding out when they do the studies, as I told you a long time ago, 2 networks back, that the oceans are what do a lot of this. It's a big storage engine as well. So if we get the frauds and the farces like China's talking about, we turn our face. Okay, we see the fraud and we don't do something about analyzing what the fraud covered and how to deal with that part. We're going to be surprised. Here, the Atlantic, if it's true, and I think it is, Atlantic currents trigger ice ages, and the scale of variation is going in that direction. You better be prepared, folks, because the fraud that they've been covering and the one that they say we're not going to promote anymore, you think the danger's over. But there's a natural consequence in the world. The world responds to its environment, not yours, its environment. And I say don't allow Galileo 2.0 to happen to your mind. There is a sun out there, and it causes these long periods of change. Variability, it's always going to be pretty much constant until a major event happens. Like the big meteor, 2016. What do you think? I should change my name? Think I get 13% of the votes just by accident, just because I changed my name? You see how fickle this whole thing ends up being? So, I wanted to focus you on, be careful of the fraud. Do you think, like the coup? The coup ended. Do you think that ended Erdogan's thing? No, that's the beginning of the plan now. So the fraud may appear to have gone away. The acknowledgement of the fraud may have happened. You think everyone's all coming to the truth, when in fact, what the fraud covered was the thing you had to be focused on. That was really what was covered, what you weren't paying attention to. So this is a much deeper type of an awareness that you have to gain in these times where they've taken our mind, they've caused us to not have a memory, they've constricted how we respond to whatever we see. We have no tools to respond, and our job is to go regain all of that. Is because there's an underlying truth and reality going on that we have to respond to, is what I've been trying to prepare people for. Whether or not we see it or ever happens to us in our time or whatever, it's still there to happen. That, if you realized, what's a good analogy? I don't even have one. It's just something about when the impending doom seems to be over, you relax. When I'm telling you that these impending dooms that appear to be over are just being uncovered when what you were told was a fraud. When you see the lie, it's like Trump saying, I'm an anti-trade deal kind of guy, and then his vice president is a trade dealer. The problem's just now starting. We think he's an answer. I don't know why we do that to ourselves. So, underneath the fraud was covering a truth. We have to go find, even though the fraud gets uncovered, we have to go to the truth it was covering to find out whether or not there's something we have to be concerned with. In a way, it's analyzing these dimensions in a way, like the Erdogan or the Brexit or climate change or all this other nonsense that they put on us. You have to go find the foundation that you intend to rest on. If you find that before, that's a good thing. It reduces the workload. But a lot of times we don't. We have to cut through this nonsense. And we do it with an incapacity. We're disabled by all this as well. And so I don't, it's not a judgment to, when I say, it's going to be difficult at some level, because we have a lot to have to work through, a lot of disability to work through. Even though we're really not stupid and we're not, dysfunctional. We appear that way because we are completely clueless to realities. The depth of the frauds upon the realities are such that it takes a lot of digging, and that does take a little bit of time. And a lot of people are just having more things in their life to do, and that's another part of that's another part of the plan. Make it impossible for you to dig through it. They have your energy spent on other things. Then all of the time they're sapping like parasites. They just sap your energy. Sap, take it away. Where they can, they develop new, like I told you, silent weapons for quiet wars. They have you plugged in, and you plug yourself in, and that happens to be a digital electronic world, and they can do whatever they want. It's all a fraud. It's hiding a truth, and yet we get focused on the fraud, and as I say, you even kind of back out of it now, you have a real problem, because now you have nothing to survive in, because there's not a system of support that we were supposed to be keeping or maintaining. We never kept that parallel system. But actually, Erdogan was complaining about this parallel system was what was starting the overthrow. See, so these are concepts that are in the world. It's not that I just make them up here that seems to have to happen. It's just what goes on. So they they cover up the truth. Then you think that the threat goes away, and the real problem was being hidden. Didn't, though. They stick, and they have you now in a condition, in a system that you're totally unaware of, so they can come and they can take advantage again. in moving through the war on terror and what all that's done and how they come on you, how they've been able to manipulate you, and that they'll allow foreign in digital. Remember, the internet comes in and they get to they look at your activity through these ISPs. Remember, that's what they're actually focused on when they can come and issue a warrant from a foreigner. When you do business outside and you go to any server outside the country and that happens to be a foreign server, a foreign government, they can come after you through your ISP. But we have a foreigner that does that right in our own place, all through digital technology. Police use DHS's automatic warrant creator to illegally access bank accounts. There's a little reader that the government now has, the police, the military thieves, that they can read any digital account. I've been telling you about your digital accounts. Be very careful. Because of this, actually, Admiralty imposed in the states confiscate forfeiture. They've been able to justify through hardly any criminal or no criminal activity, just the allegation that it thought to have been made, even by somebody else. They can steal your stuff. They now have digitally. They can steal your any credit card, debit card. They get your accounts from a little reader. The military now can take to secure themselves, and all this money, this forfeiture money, goes to secure the police, which is the military. That's in the Libra Code. They're not supposed to, but see, there's no law here, right? It's whoever has the biggest gun now, whoever has the biggest, who can be the biggest bully and brute, because we didn't keep that law to find out where the excess happened. So, word to the wise, as the government breaks down the jurisdictions, it breaks down all the constraints, it breaks down your law, it breaks down your remedy. You have no response against the plunder. It's now so simple. They now have portable readers, and they can block your under forfeiture. They just take any money you have on a credit card or accounts. They can lock them out. They can take the debit card money from you. You can't even use that. They have every way they're to come at you, all under the auspices of the war of terror they're putting on you. And I hear crickets against it. They can also do these things. The banks, we talked about this weeks ago, the banks are integrated enough to give them information. The banks do the red flagging as well. These are all government military agents. How long are you going to continue to operate within this this jurisdiction is going to be, I guess, up to you. I'm not a know-it-all of all the information on how. I just know that this stuff is going on, and we have a lot of people that can address the matter. And there's just not enough in it right now, and I'm hoping for more. But it doesn't matter. Each one of us has to make these decisions. No different in the anonymity sector of the digital. The least amount of you doing certain thing is easier to find you. When the actual thing is you look like everybody else, you don't have any specialties, and you just go out and you're very much harder to find out. You kind of blend in with the herd. So a lot of people can act as cover. There's another reason why we shouldn't be crickets as well. But as long as we're not the cricket slayer to the cricket within us, these things we've heard, these game players, these psychopaths, these sociopaths will rule your life, make your life miserable. And it just seems to be that's the way it is. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope something I said today was helpful. Hopefully give you inspired to go grab something, maybe look at the world a little differently, figure out, give credit where credit's due, like Erdogan. I think he might have shown us he's a master game player, or otherwise he's just admitted he's the biggest fool and the luckiest one I've ever seen. But thank you very much, Grimner. Thank you very much for the website space and work you do. freedomsnetwork.com, social network. Maybe sign up there, folks. UCY.TV. Jules, thank you for syndicating, and all y'all. If you would tell people about the broadcast if they can play it, let them know. Maybe interject wherever you see someone saying we need broadcasts or podcasts. Maybe suggest my broadcast or podcast, and submit it to some place, or say, hey, you need to listen to this guy. He's got something to say. If you think I do, the terrestrial broadcasters do appreciate what you do there, and getting the word out. Again, it's just us understanding all the disabilities that we have and working through them nonetheless, and then prevailing at the end of the day. I'll be here next week, tech diffs and nature willing.